It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So I'm finding some interesting things going on with some of the articles I've been reading, and they have to do with the traditional 60-40 stock bond split that's been recommended by Wall Street for over 50 years. And the reasons why they're starting to sour on the whole 60-40 split idea is because, as the CNBC article states, Wall Street is souring on Magnificent Seven stocks after the group's worst earnings season since 2022. It's no secret the last couple of years that the market, particularly the tech market, and most significantly the Magnificent Seven, that's the seven tech stocks as they're often referred to, have been the biggest portion of the gains of the stock market over the last couple of years in particular. The gains were frankly stupendous. We saw over 20% gains in the S&P 500 over each of the last 2 years, much of it because of the Magnificent Seven. And that's, of course, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Tesla, etc. The gains have been so significant that to expect them to continue anywhere near the same rate is highly unrealistic. You cannot continue to have tremendous percentage rate gains continue year after year after year. It gets harder and harder to maintain that type of growth. So something eventually was going to have to give, and now we're starting to see the earnings for the Magnificent Seven not being nearly as strong as they were before, and again, why Wall Street is starting to sour on those particular stocks. And therefore, it caused a stock market concentration of just literally a handful of companies or so that we have not seen since 1929 and 1999 levels. The returns on the markets after that were significantly bad, and that's why this Business Insider article is stating it's setting up the S&P 500 for dismal returns over the next several years. I've shared on this show multiple times recently analysts from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Vanguard, and others have all come out with predictions of the S&P 500 averaging 3 to 5% annually for the next decade. At the same time, many of these same analysts are calling this the golden era of fixed assets. Bond interest rates or yields are stronger than they've been in over 40 years. And if these analysts are correct, the fixed assets like annuities, cash value insurance, the products that I primarily deal with, will outperform the S&P 500 over the next decade. That is the shift that we are seeing, the vibe, the shift. One person I spoke to this past week, she stated, after having made significant returns in the stock market, particularly after the last couple of years, she stated, the markets are getting very frothy, was her term. And most people are definitely starting to recognize that fact. And she's wanting to pull some of those winnings off the table, protect the downside, reduce the market risk, which is becoming a more and more common concern for investors. Kiplinger even came out recently stating, are 60-40 portfolios still relevant today? The point of their article was, given that the S&P 500 and stocks are unlikely to obtain good returns for the next decade, if a majority of your investments happen to be in stocks, it's likely your returns are going to be far below what many expect or have experienced over the past decade. And one of the interesting points they were making on this was it might be wise to invest in uncorrelated assets. And I've argued that point literally for years, if not decades. Diversifying into an uncorrelated asset is just wise. This is an asset that's not subject to the stock market. high cash value dividend paying policies, annuities, uncorrelated asset, and some of the fixed assets that tend to pay the highest returns consistently and historically. So I find it interesting that even Kipler's coming around to the idea that I've been sharing for a very long time. If you'd like to reduce your market risk, create a tax-free bucket of money, highly liquid. We could do that with a dividend paying high cash value insurance policy. If you'd like to grow your money with double digit potential upside with no downside market risk. I had clients that made 22% in their annuities last year. We can do that. Of doing that within an annuity is if the market has a correction in the future, you get to keep those gains. That's the value of an annuity. If you'd like a pension check or increase your pension, guaranteed lifetime income riders have never paid more. The numbers have never been better in over 40 years. I have companies that pay up to a 30% signing bonus or can increase the amount of your guaranteed income by up to 14% annually each year you defer. We've never seen numbers like this. If you're older or you've had health issues and you have an old life insurance policy that maybe has some cash value or doesn't, and you don't want to have to continue to fund it and you want to cash that out, we have companies that'll purchase those for you and will pay you a portion of the death benefit upfront now. That's called a life settlement. If you have a larger estate and you'd like to set up a high cash value dividend paying policy, grow your money tax free, insured, guaranteed, highly liquid, and you'd like a bank to fund the premium for you, in other words, no out of pocket cost for you, that's premium financing. We can do that. And another tool that I have not shared very often is third party administration programs where you can fund life insurance, annuities, and other assets into a qualified plan so you can get the benefits of life insurance, cash value, annuity, safety, strong upside potential with no downside or with no downside risk, all within a qualified plan so you can or defer the taxes, especially if you're in the high tax bracket scenario. Those are referred to as deferred comp plans or deferred benefit plans. And you often, depending on your income, can defer far more than, say, an IRA or a 401k, typical 401k can do. So if you're interested in any of those types of things, again, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. There are numerous tools that we have, financial tools, that can accomplish a lot of things that are outside the realm of the stocks, bond, mutual fund, diversify, standard mantra that we all hear consistently. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Those are bad things. It's just I often run into people that don't realize there's any other option. They'll say, well, what else is there out there? And my response is there's a ton of options out there that might just surprise you, oftentimes outperform what you're investing in now, certainly in most cases reduce or eliminate downside market risk and or taxes. So there's a ton of solutions we have that you haven't given yourself, that you, if you have not explored, or maybe if you did but didn't get solid information, you should contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I would say if you did look into some of these other solutions, oftentimes these are areas of specialty that most advisors, including insurance agents or others, just don't have. They have little or no experience in these areas. Fortunately, these are the types of tools that I've been doing for literally over 25 years now. So what I'm trying to say is there's a whole nother world out there of investment options and tools that most people that are listening to me right now have never even been introduced to, or perhaps maybe explored, but unfortunately somebody that really did not have the experience or knowledge and were able to effectively communicate how it could benefit you. So I really do encourage you to contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I think you'll be in most cases, you'll be extremely pleasantly surprised because I'm going to share a few thoughts in the next segment of some folks I met with just this week that were just eye-opening scenarios for the people that I met with. It's the best time in over 40 years for a number of these tools, these financial tools. It's the golden era of fixed assets. Take advantage of it. We have opportunities that are truly amazing that just have not either been available or were not as appealing as they would have been even a year or two ago. Contact me if you want more information. I'll share a few more thoughts and ideas on this. And then we're going to get into some government waste and fraud. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferens. For more information, contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferens Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferens Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferens. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So in the first segment, I was sharing some thoughts of some of the tools, the financial tools that we use that most people are often not aware of that even exist. Or if they did explore them, they probably did so with an advisor or agent who lacked experience or knowledge, because these are definitely areas of specialty that few advisors deal with. I've been fortunate. I've been blessed with a number of scenarios. So dealing with business owners and professionals in nearly any kind of scenario you can imagine for the last 25 years, being the chairman of the board of a bank even. I mean, all these different experiences have exposed me to a number of scenarios, again, that most advisors are just not even exposed to, frankly. And let me give you a couple examples of some scenarios that I ran into just this past week that I think some of you just might find interesting. So, for example, I have one client who owns her own business and has experienced a significant increase in income in this past year or two, and that has created a significant tax bill. And unfortunately for her situation, she's single. That reduces the tax deductibility. With her particular business, there's not a significant number of write-offs. Her tax advisor discussed options with her like a SEP IRA, which is something many self-employed people use, but the amount of contributions for that are very limited. Because of that, this was going to cause a tremendous tax bill. Well, the good news is there's something called a third-party administration defined benefit plan or defined distribution plan that allows a far significant more amount of money to be deferred into a qualified plan than, say, a SEP IRA or even what a 401k would allow. This, in effect, is going to reduce her taxes, bring her down a tax bracket, in fact. We're going to be able to reduce her tax bill by nearly $100,000 just by utilizing this tool. Again, this was not something even our own tax advisor has advised or recommended. We're going to involve the tax advisor, of course, using the third-party administrator. She can actually invest in life insurance, cash value life if she wants to, annuities, or nearly any other financial tool for that matter. But the key focus here is, how do you reduce taxes when you're in a high income situation, which is where her situation is at as we speak. Later, when she is ready to retire, she'll be able to withdraw monies from this at likely a far lower tax bracket, because in retirement, her income will be a lot less. My point is this: for a higher income person, they often get stuck paying a lot of taxes because they don't realize there are other options available other than just IRAs and 401ks. There are defined benefit plans, there's defined pension plans, there's all types of tools that can be used that can defer hundreds of thousands of dollars of income, which reduces the taxes by often 6 digits or more, depending on somebody's income. I had another interesting situation with a business owner this week where he had a business loan. He's looking to sell that business, And obviously, the value of the business without a loan, it's worth more if you're selling it versus if it is carrying a loan. One of the things I was recommend to him through your personal bank, he had some funds available. He could invest into it, borrow against it, and pay off that business note and lower his cost of borrowing by nearly 1% interest. This is going to do two things. One, lowers the cost of borrowing. And two, by taking those funds that were being invested elsewhere, yes, we're getting a return, but frankly, the return on those investments were not as great as the interest he was getting charged on the business loan. So he's actually benefiting as a result of this, but it also adds over $6,000 of monthly cash flow to this business, which now makes it far more valuable. As he stated, his business broker told him he could probably sell it without debt for another $100,000 to $200,000 more. By using the personal bank, the cash value in the personal bank policy and borrowing against it, there's no requirement to make any monthly payments, principal or interest. So he will be able to sell a debt-free business. Now, once he sells that business for a likely higher amount of money, he can take a portion of those proceeds and pay back the loan. So instead of having monies invested, making a certain amount of return, he can actually pay off the note on his business, lower his cost of borrowing, increase the value of his business, sell it, and get a far greater return, a far greater ROI than any investment would do. This also, by the way, the combination of selling the business for the higher level, the higher amount of money, will allow him to retire somewhere between at least a year or two sooner than he thought he would. He was quite excited about that prospect, as you can well imagine. A third example I want to share with you that I dealt with this week. I had a person who's a real estate investor who put a significant amount of money into their personal bank policy so that they can then access the funds on a tax-free basis, receive some positive arbitrage while they invest in real estate assets. But they also had another account, an IRA, and I asked her a simple question. I said, would you like a pension? Well, that perked her interest. Most people these days don't have a pension. And one of the things, retirement planning concept that's often shared in financial literacy courses is protect or lock down or guarantee what you're going to need in retirement, to like the basics: food, clothing, housing. And then if you have that locked down and locked in, so to speak, you can take your other monies, invest, and hopefully get a greater return, put that at risk if necessary. But it minimizes the stress, because if you know you have your basics covered for retirement, food, clothing, housing again, it's a less stressful situation. It's a less risky situation. So we took a combination of Social Security benefits that she expected to receive in about a decade, plus taking this IRA, turning it into a guaranteed lifetime income. By the way, in her case, it's going to increase by about 10% per year that she defers this money. That's a pretty darn good return on your money, I would say. And she's going to receive a guaranteed lifetime income that'll be about half of what she expects she needs in retirement. So Security is going to cover the other half, assuming an 80% payout. If you've listened to this show, you know I've interviewed former Social Security trustees. And if you look at the Social Security trustee report, they state that if Congress does nothing, if no changes are made in about 8 years, Social Security will be able to pay 79% of the current benefit. So my statement is, plan on receiving that 79, 80% of whatever Social Security is projecting you're going to receive, or you may already be receiving. That's the safe way to plan. Again, if nothing changes, that's what the trustees themselves are telling us. Look, if it turns out to be 100% or something higher, great. You're money ahead. That's gravy. But plan on 80%. That's directly from the Social Security trustees. So based on 80% Social Security benefit and the monies we put into the guaranteed income rider, she was able to satisfy comfortably enough money to live on to cover the basics: food, housing, and clothing. She had another chunk of money to invest in the personal bank, like I said, to be able to continue to do real estate investing. That's a great combination. We did both tools. What I'm trying to say is it's not always one tool or another. One tool may not be the full solution for someone. And the analogy I used for this client was a contractor just doesn't have a hammer. If they're trying to do a remodel or build a house, they have a hammer and a saw and various other tools to do the entire job. So as I stated to her, you have different buckets of money, you have different financial tools here to accomplish different goals or different jobs. So if you have a guaranteed lifetime income rider, for example, to ensure you have a pension check, great for that bucket. If you have another tool, maybe you have upside potential with an annuity with no downside risk, great. If you have dividends with a high cash value personal bank policy, for example, that allow you to grow a tax-free bucket of money, highly liquid, perhaps allow you to invest in other assets like real estate or crypto or the stocks or bonds or, well, anything else you want to invest in, great. I'm not the person here to say to stop doing something if it's working for you. What I'm going to do is show you how to enhance it through perhaps positive arbitrage with the personal bank policy to increase your rate of return or your profit, I should say, by 10, 20% even. Look, if you're making a 10% return profit on an investment you're doing, whatever that may be, if you increased it to 12%, you just increased your profit by 20%. Take any business out there in this world and you tell them, I can show you how to increase your profits, the bottom line, the top line number, profit number, by 20%. They're going to be dancing in the street. That's the type of thing we do. That's what I do with clients, teaching them how to make their money work for them more efficiently than it is now. Not just put it somewhere and, set it and forget it or hope it works out or whatever. And the last thing I want to share, again, is a very common financial literacy concept or mistake that many, many people make is they start comparing rates of return, asking the question is, should they do this or that? You're asking the wrong question when you do that. You're dealing with the wrong premise. What you should be looking at is, how can I do this and that? So if you have an investment you like, great. You could continue doing it or add a step. Put it in a personal bank policy, for example. Then borrow against it, receive positive arbitrage. The historical positive arbitrage for the last 40 plus years is about 2%. If you put it in the policy, borrow against it, and then invest in that asset, you now increase your profit rate of return by a couple of percent. Now, again, that's a big deal. If you're getting a 10% ROI, return on investment, you're now getting 12 historically on average. That's a 20% increase on returns. That's what your personal bank can do. These other tools, again, can accomplish other things like guaranteed lifetime income or reduce market risk or whatever, or reduce your taxes. There's a number of other tools. Like I said, we have a whole tool bag available of different tools that can accomplish different goals that you may have. And one or more of those may be a great fit for you, and you perhaps may not even realize it. If you want more information, of course, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to now really dive into some government waste and taxes, so you don't want to miss it.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So in the news recently has been a lot of information about government fraud, waste, corruption, you name it. I shared a lot of things about this very topic just last week. If you missed it, you can go to yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows anytime you want. You also can go to the Your Personal Bank app. It's a free app. Many of my clients love listening to it. I, for one, like most people, have known that there has been waste, fraud, corruption in our government. Most of us, I think, including myself, recognize that there was a significant amount of it. But as Doge and Elon Musk has been uncovering, and other departments are now starting to uncover the level of fraud, waste, corruption, abuse, it's breathtaking. It's shocking. It's hard to fathom. I'm gonna admit myself, even last week's show, I think I was more in shock than anything else. It was kind of hard for me to even be angry because I was just so shocked at the level of waste, fraud, abuse, corruption that is getting uncovered. And I understand this is just the tip of the iceberg. USAID was one of the first pieces of it. But as we start seeing more and more of this, I'm seeing a shift in people's feelings, including my own, and that is it's starting to move towards anger, and rightly so. And to understand some of this, how it's happening, how it could happen, is we're taxed. And then some of those taxes go to organizations like USAID and others. And for the most part, leftists create a non government association or an NGO, a non governmental organization. That NGO is then funded by USAID and other government agencies. The leftists at the NGO do little or no actual real work, or if they're ideologues, many of them have done things that are frankly detrimental to U.S. interests, or certainly the U.S. citizens' interests in most cases. These NGOs are paid huge salaries, oftentimes by their executives and others, and these leftists donate a portion of their salaries from their non-governmental organization back to Democrats. And I'm going to share some more of this, primarily, I should say, primarily Democrats and also some rhinos, which, by the way, the definition of a rhino is Republican in name only, which means by definition they're a Democrat, right? Because they're not a Republican. And that is why you're seeing so many Democrats literally freaking out about Trump and Elon killing USAID and some of these other governmental organizations. For example, legacy media, for the most part, pretends to be neutral. But we have found out that they are not neutral. They're not neutral at all. Anyone with even an ounce of honesty will admit that majority of the legacy media tilts left. There's a left bias in their reporting and what they do. They attempt to influence how people think. Well, you need to reject the propaganda because that is literally what it is. It is government funded propaganda. USAID has now been proven to have funded over 6,000 journalists across over 700 media outlets and nearly 300 media, quote unquote, non governmental organizations. This includes 9 out of 10 media outlets in Ukraine alone. The reach of USAID in the legacy media is astounding. And if a good portion of your funding comes from governmental organizations like USAID, why in the world would you do anything to report or discourage that? You'd be biting the hand that fed you. So literally, the majority of our legacy media, we're talking about AP, Reuters, New York Times, among many, many others, who have literally received millions and millions of dollars from our taxpayer money. Folks, that's government-funded media, government-sponsored media. What is so despicable about that is, again, they pretend to be neutral or try to attempt to be appear to be neutral, yet they're anything but. People in Russia or China understand their government sponsored media is not neutral. It's propaganda. I have less of an issue with that media because it's well known, well understood to be government media. We've been lied to for literally decades. Stop listening to the legacy media and propaganda because that's all it is, and we now have the receipts. Another example is George Soros received $260 million from USAID. This is documented now. He recently purchased 200 radio stations, and much of the money he used to purchase those radio stations came from USAID, which is a government agency that was funded by the U.S. taxpayer. So, by definition, we own those radio stations, and it was purchased under fraudulent means. There is nothing in the USAID funding that authorized them to give money to George Soros to purchase radio stations. It is strictly, straight up fraud and corruption. And when you have fraud and corruption, typically what happens? Those assets get clawed back, don't they? These radio stations should be clawed back, the ownership of them, and they should be given back to the U.S. taxpayer, we the people, because we're the ones that bought them, not George Soros. We want our money back. A lot of people forget that the Clintons had a daughter, Chelsea Clinton, and it now turns out that USAID has given her an annual recurring fund to provide meals to children in Africa, India, and Bangladesh. On the surface, that sounds all nice. The total that Chelsea Clinton has received to date is $84 million. Again, sounds like a lot of money, but if she's doing a good thing with it, what's the problem? Well, here is the problem. It turns out that so far, the number of meals that have been served, are less than 12,000, which comes down to average cost of over $1,400 per meal. Folks, there's some kickbacks and frauds going on involved with that. If you're charging $1,400 per meal, where's the rest of the money going to? Well, it turns out Chelsea Clinton's reported net worth is $70 million today. She owns a mansion worth $10 million, has total real estate assets of $25 billion, owns 8 cars. Sounds like Chelsea needs to be investigated. That's what I think. Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. He was awarded nearly a $5 billion grant from USAID to his vaccine organization. No wonder Bill Gates is speaking out against Doge and dismantling of USAID. He's received $5 billion from them. And it's not just USAID that's the problem. It turns out over $584 million was spent on illegals just in the months of December of 2024 and January of 2025. And as this person points out, if that doesn't piss you off, are you even American? And famously, recently, it was revealed FEMA sent $59 million to put up illegal aliens in New York City hotels. This was after the Trump executive order stating that type of spending to be paused. So it's against the law, against the executive order. The CEO of the executive branch happens to be the president of the United States, and FEMA is part of the executive branch. So they literally broke the law to send this money to New York to pay for illegals, while at the same time FEMA was saying they didn't have any money for the folks in North Carolina or in Hawaii, but they had $59 million they could send to put up illegals in luxury hotels in New York City. That's fraud. Fortunately, that was actually clawed back. That was caught, and the new FEMA director has now clawed that back. It seems to me when you see this type of fraud in any other type of scenario, there's typically a class action lawsuit that's filed. Perhaps there needs to be a class action lawsuit against USAID for U.S. taxpayers. Now, as bad as all of those things are, and they truly are horrendous from a fraud, waste, corruption standpoint, those things that I've shared already pale in comparison when we dive into Social Security and Medicare. Because, folks, that's where the big money is. That also happens to be where the big fraud is. And on this show, I've been discussing a number of times, again, as I stated earlier, I've even interviewed former Social Security trustees on this show concerned about Social Security running out of money. Well, it turns out one of the major reasons why Social Security and Medicare and those benefits are running out of money is because the amount of fraudulent payments have been going out to dead people and folks overseas. I'm going to share more about that in the next segment, so I'm going to really encourage you to stay tuned. Don't miss it.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferens. For more information, contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferens Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferens Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferens. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So the Doge team has been started to dig into the Social Security database. And look, and here's what they found. It turns out that the database is not duplicated, meaning you can have the same Social Security number many times over, which enables massive fraud. This is being changed as we speak, which is a very good thing. The U.S. Treasury have now jointly agreed with Doge to require all outgoing government payments to have a payment categorization code, which is necessary in order to pass any financial audit. This is basic financial auditing stuff. Financials 101, folks. The only reason why Social Security doesn't have a system in place to prevent duplicate Social Security numbers is it's not that they're stupid or lazy. There are people that intentionally wanted to enable and maximize fraud. That's the only reason. No one can be that stupid. A third grader would know this, who understood any kind of basic auditing or financial methods. Due to the fact that there was no way to track duplicate Social Security numbers in the system, it now turns out and been found that the government last year sent $1.3 billion of Social Security checks to dead people. And to make matters worse, folks, the checks were cashed. Who is cashing those checks? This is where the investigation is heading. I'm curious, as well as you should be, and it'll be interesting to find out where these checks are actually going. It turns out they found hundreds of people that were over age 150, according to the records, yet they were never purged from the system. Social Security just continued to keep paying them. And folks, again, the checks were cashed. The Doge team has found the U.S. Treasury has reported that $50 billion a year is going to people who have no known Social Security number. So $50 billion a year Social Security checks are going out to people without a Social Security number. It's also been confirmed illegals have been put on Social Security with the max benefits. Hundreds of thousands of Ukraine refugees, quote unquote, are claiming American Social Security benefits. These were put on by the Biden administration. And as when reported and stated, that the magnitude of the fraud in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, disability exceeds the combined sum of every private scam you've ever heard of by far. Literally billions of dollars are getting stolen, this, of course, is threatening the viability of these programs, things like Social Security, Medicare, etc. It even gets worse. This has been confirmed that the US government sent 2.7 trillion in Medicare and Medicaid money overseas to people who were not eligible to receive it since over the past 20 years. That number is approximately 8% of our total national debt. Nearly 10% of our debt went to paying people over the last 20 years, Medicare and Medicaid, to folks overseas that are not eligible. Medicare is not broke, folks. The money is being stolen. Again, these are just the things that are being found out in the very first weeks of the Trump administration and the Doge team. How far does the fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption go? How much of this 36 trillion of debt we are currently saddled with is a result of waste and fraud and corruption? That remains to be seen, but as each day and each week proceeds, that number just keeps climbing. It's hard to fathom. And if it doesn't make you, first of all, shocked, as it did with me last week, it should lead to anger. And that is exactly what's happening with a lot of folks. It gets even more interesting, though. I personally had a lot of issue with the response of the church overall to government shutdowns that we saw through COVID and various things. I had a hard time understanding why there was so much acquiescence to the government and why there was so much like never Trump leaders in the evangelical Christian organizations, many of the leaders being vehemently anti-Trump. Well, now it turns out that many of them were getting paid by our tax dollars through USAID and other organizations to be never Trumpers. Interesting. Just like many of our Hollywood actors were paid to take pictures with Zelensky to make him quote unquote more popular, many of our church leaders were getting paid by the government to voice their opposition to Trump. Isn't that interesting? It does answer a lot of questions of why much of what we have seen and experienced, why it is the way it is, just like the legacy media getting paid by government agencies like from USAID and others to influence their reporting or lack of reporting. But it continues. It turns out Congress paid over $500 billion in 2024 into expired programs with zero oversight. These are programs with expired authorizations, some dating over 40 years. That's how long this has been going on, folks. And despite rules against funding unauthorized programs, lawmakers ignored them, letting billions flow without updated approvals or any oversight. In fact, there's over 250 more authorizations set to expire in 2025, including nearly $1 trillion in defense spending. Yet Congress just keeps writing blank checks. Folks, this isn't governance. This is corruption. And Congress is guilty of recklessly burning taxpayer money on programs they don't even bother to approve. And this is the source is the Congressional Budget Office. We need representatives that are actually going to represent us, not be corrupt, and frankly, probably many of them on the take with kickbacks. Remember, there's 535 people in Congress, and it only took Doge a few days to expose the corruption. Most of our elected representatives will tell you that they represent us. Well, they're lying. They should have put a stop to this corruption decades ago, yet they didn't. Keep that in mind the next time you go in the voting booth. Remember when you struggled to make payments on your house or your car, or you were scraping the bottom of the barrel when you went to the grocery store, and you were struggling to put food on the table for your family, or you were working your tail off to make money so that you could live a decent life. Yet at the same time, we had elected representatives and bureaucrats spending hundreds of billions of dollars on anyone who didn't earn it, sending it to foreign countries that didn't deserve it, while you were paying for it. Remember that next time you're in the voting booth. And I've heard some people, say, well, this program was only 40 million or 10 million or whatever. Do you realize $10 million adds up to about 20 people working their entire lives, pay taxes to do that? And they throw around 10 million like it's nothing. Again, this isn't government waste. This is corruption. The Democrats and the rhinos aren't incompetent. They are thieves. They are stealing government money, which is not their money, it's our money. It's the people, taxpayers' money. What do you do with thieves? That you arrest them. And if you're not outraged, you're beyond hope. I don't even know what to say. Some of the points that I've been seeing people make, the anger level is rising, and my opinion is good. First step is recognize what's going on. Realize the theft, the corruption, the greed, what elected representatives, with very few exceptions, and bureaucrats have been doing this to us for decades. See, this isn't left or right, Democrat, Republican anymore. This is the thieves against the honest people. If your representative voted to continue funding programs that weren't even authorized anymore, sending money overseas, voting for war, voting for open borders, voting for all these things so that they could take advantage of the situation and benefit themselves personally, those need to be replaced. If they voted against spending more than the government received, those might be worth keeping. Some that come to mind are people like Rand Paul. It's a great example. There are others. Forget Republican and Democrat. That's over. That's behind us. Forget left and right. Are you a thief or not? That's really what it should come down to when you think about who you're going to support and vote for next time. You see, these thieves, their assets should be confiscated and restored to the individual citizens, like any theft would be, because that's what this is. And if it's illegal to audit our government, which some are trying to fight doing, then we are living truly under the very definition of taxation without representation. And that's what's leading many people to start thinking about how pissed off they are, thinking about having to pay taxes after seeing all this government waste, fraud, corruption, and abuse. Can you really show American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, even trillions of dollars of fraud, theft, and waste, and then expect them to pay their taxes a few months later? Are taxpayers going to demand a refund? Do they deserve a refund? Absolutely. Most taxpayers have been working hard and grinding away for decades to pay their taxes. I'm even seeing calls for abolishing the 16th Amendment, which is the income tax. Taxation is theft. I want a refund. I'm seeing those types of things more and more. I applaud it. Too many people have been afraid to not file or pay because they've been threatened or abused their whole lives. Some can't afford it and are in despair. Some people are asking for a pause, a reprieve. Does the American taxpayer deserve it? I think so. I saw this grandma, I thought it was great when she found out all the theft and fraud and abuse. And her response was, I want every tax dollar I ever paid in back, ever. She's angry, and rightfully so. I even saw one person said, wouldn't it be interesting if Trump offered a pardon for everyone who didn't pay their taxes? Wouldn't that be an interesting idea? There is some good news. I have stated on the show repeatedly that I am bullish on the long-term future of this country. I like what's going on in terms of the direction we're headed. We got to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, the corruption, and there's a massive mess to clean up. And there's going to be some bumps on the road short term, but it'll lead to better long-term prosperity. And perhaps taxes will go down, or even as Trump is often even just is tossing out the idea of eliminating the income tax. Wouldn't that be amazing? If we had a smaller government that wasn't so fraudulent and wasteful in spending, that could potentially be accomplished. And recently, a federal judge has ruled that Trump does, in fact, have the constitutional authority to freeze or limit certain government's federal spending. These are wins that this is going to be a fight. The left is fighting it every step of the way because this is their grift. This is their corruption. Again, the left and the rhinos are thieves. That's being proven out every day. And their thievery is being exposed. That's step one. Hopefully, some of this can be clawed back like any fraudulent theft. Maybe we can retrieve some of this money back, maybe pay down some of the debt, maybe get some relief or a pause or reduction in taxes. These are all possibilities that exist in the future, so I am excited, but the problem has to be dealt with first. It's going to be a rocky ride. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to take some time, but it could be very interesting how this turns out. Stay tuned to Your Personal Bank Show next week, and as long as it's on our money, in God we trust.
Listen Tuesdays at noon and Saturdays at 1 to the Your Personal Bank Show for more information. Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Some products discussed may have limitations and not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Dividend rates and bank line of credit rates may change. For current rates, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. Again, that's 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.